So how are we all feeling? Newcastle United face a huge game against Everton on Sunday to decide whether they play in the Champions League next season, and that is an era-defining match as well. The direction of the club, transfers, everything rests on winning this game. To preview the game, talk about Alexander Isak, whether he's going to be returning from his groin injury, and also there's plenty of transfer news to get into, as well as a couple of your questions. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Before we start, thanks so much to everybody who subscribed, because I finally reached the ultimate goal of 1,000 subscribers. That has been a massive target from the very moment that I started this channel 2 years ago, talking about Newcastle United. I've tried a few different things, but I'm really pleased to finally reach that milestone. That's a huge moment for me, because I can now put different plans in place to go to the next phase and reach new heights with this channel. I really appreciate all the support. 3,500 views on my last video, over 200 likes, plenty of comments as well. I couldn't quite believe the attention that video got, and that was why I was able to get to 1,000 subscribers. By the end of the season, we've actually got there with a game to spare, which is incredible. I was thinking at one stage I'd have to go into the summer to wait to get to that milestone, but we've hit it with over 100 of you subscribing off the back of that one video. So thanks so much to everybody who has joined the community. It really does make such a difference. It means so much to me, and I really appreciate it. I can only promise to bring you more content, and I can only thank you for enjoying it as well. I've got a huge announcement planned next week which will change the face of the channel forever in a positive way, and I'm really hopeful that you'll join me on that journey. So thanks so much to everyone who's subscribed. If you haven't already, please do, because it really does help. And like the video as well, share the video, do everything that you can to help this channel grow, because it really makes such a difference. But we're going to get straight into it by talking about that big game on Sunday against Everton. It really is era defining, because ultimately winning the game will mean that Newcastle play in the Champions League, and all of the conversations we're going to have across the summer with the transfers, what happens with players in and players out, crucially as well, with lots of Newcastle's best players being linked with other clubs. This is where it all hinges. If Newcastle win the game, which, and as I said in the intro, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what happens at Old Trafford with Aston Villa, at the City Ground between Nottingham Forest and Chelsea, Man City against Fulham, none of it matters. If Newcastle United can win the game against Everton on Sunday, they will be in the Champions League. The big talking point, of course, is whether Alexander Isak will be fit. He missed the game against Arsenal with a groin problem, which has been troubling him pretty much since Brentford, when he came off just after the cup final, and really since then he's not been the same player. But we saw against Arsenal, I think, how important he is in terms of his movement. So he's fit, and if he proves his fitness, he will play. And that was the message from Eddie Howe this morning. He's going to train tomorrow. He's got a chance. There is a real risk-averse attitude towards injuries this season from James Bunce coming in. As I've mentioned, I've written about that for Forbes, but I think that is kind of loosened a little bit because of the magnitude of the game, because of how important it is, because of the fact that Newcastle need to win, and their record without Alexander Isak is really poor. I think they've played 4, lost 4, so not having Isak would point to a very tough afternoon for Newcastle. So I think they'll give him every chance. I think he'll take that chance as well. I think he'll be involved, and that was a question from Andy on Twitter. What did I know about Alexander Isak? I think that he'll play. Eddie Howe's now confirmed he's going to train tomorrow, hopefully, and that's what's going to be the definitive point. He's also been named in the Sweden squad, which is really interesting because it points to the fact that he's not too seriously injured. I think Eddie Howe's maintained that all the way through. So I think because of the magnitude of the game, because he'll be given every chance, he'll at very least be in the squad. And I think if he's in the squad, he'll probably start the game and maybe play an hour, maybe 75 minutes, something like that. Kieran Trippier as well is very much in the same boat, I think Eddie Howe said as well. So he's got a late fitness test. Whether he'll play is going to be interesting. If not, will there be a back three with Murphy as a wing back? Will they go to a 4-3-3 with Murphy on the right hand side and probably Emil Kraft coming in? I think that would be what I'd do, but what would you do in terms of the centre-back situation? Do you keep Sven Botman in the team in a back four, or do you rest him and stay with Byrne and Cher, who have been brilliant this season and also has that sort of left-right thing that Eddie Howe likes? If you play Botman for that you'd have to drop Burn. I think that's very, very unlikely to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a back three just to try and get those three players in, especially if Trippier isn't fit. But we'll see. I think Newcastle are a better team, especially in these games with a back four. So I think Newcastle should go to that. I would personally play Botman and Burn and drop Schär. But there's a huge decision to make on that regarding the formation. But whatever happens, Newcastle United really need to win this game. And I think the best case scenario for that is a back four because they progress the ball better. The back three suits them when they're playing in a game where they have less possession, as they did at times against Chelsea, as they did certainly against Arsenal as well. As I said, they really have mastered that art of playing with 35% possession and making it work. This time they've got to impose themselves. Everton's away record is fairly good, but they've also only scored 15 goals in 18 away games this season. So an early goal is absolutely crucial. Starting really fast, getting at them, setting the tone. Similar to the Chelsea game, it's very much the same sort of rallying cry. And that is reflected in the fact that the club has offered 2 free beers for fans going into the ground earlier, making noise and making that atmosphere, making it one of those nervous energy games. All of the same things. It's go again. That's exactly what Newcastle need to do. I wouldn't be surprised if Botman's on the bench just because Burn and Schär have got that partnership. They've had it all season. Botman is still recovering from an injury, so I wouldn't be surprised if Botman's on the bench with a back four, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it's a back three just to get him in the team, even though I disagree with that. But the big news is whether Isak plays or not. That will be such a big lift if he's in the squad, and I think Newcastle will give him every chance. I think he'll be in the squad, and I think it'll give everybody that extra little bit of oomph to go into the game, and Newcastle will win the game. Why I'm not particularly nervous about whether Newcastle do it, it's because since the cup final I've seen that Newcastle and Eddie Howe are brilliant at executing a plan properly when it matters. They've done it in every home game since the cup final. They did it in the cup final where they really worked towards it. I trust Eddie Howe to get these players over the line because of the way he did it from March onwards. It's been absolutely brilliant. And he deserves so much credit. And for me, and I'll get into this in a later video, he's the manager of the season. I'll explain why that is in a little bit. This is a huge, huge game. I think Newcastle are going to win it 3-0. There are going to be tough moments where Everton are going to make it difficult. I mean, Jordan Pickford's going to be in goal. He's going to really want to spoil the party if he can. But Everton have had a big exhale themselves this season. They've just left Goodison Park. That was the big emotional thing for them, and that's gone. They have nothing to play for. There's no real excuses for Newcastle not to win this game comfortably, I think, because of that. They're the ones who've got to set the tone. They're the ones who've got to go for it, and they will, and I think it'll be a comfortable 3-0 victory. That'll be helped by Isak's fitness, if that is proven. Eddie Howe is desperate for him to play. I think we saw last week that Callum Wilson isn't the answer. So if he isn't fit, I know I've advocated for Will Asula to keep the focal point and to keep the way Newcastle play, but maybe it would be better to play Anthony Gordon down the middle, to lead that press from the centre, and have Barnes and Murphy out wide. That might be a better way to go if Isak isn't fit, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. We'll see. But yeah, I think Newcastle are going to comfortably win this game and get into the Champions League, and then this is the summer where everything changes, and we're going to get into that a lot more over the coming weeks. But let me know in the comment section what you think about whether you play Isak, what formation you play, and whether you think Newcastle United are going to win this game. But for me, this is the time Newcastle United step up. The England squad was announced this morning. Dan Burn and Anthony Gordon are in there. No Tino Livramento and Jacob Murphy. Jacob Murphy would have been a brilliant story. Obviously, he's had a fantastic season on form. He fully deserves to be in there. But Livramento is the more mystifying one to me in terms of the fact that he's obviously one of England's better fullbacks, and he's been brilliant in a position that isn't his own. He's been fantastic since moving over to left back, so he's shown he can play both sides. Really handy to Thomas Tuchel. So it's strange to me that Liverpool's missed out more than it is strange that Murphy's missed out. As good as Murphy's been, it's very hard to get into that forward line. Would have been brilliant. He fully deserves an England Cup just for the recognition. So there's a couple of other links as well to talk about in the transfer market. Mark Douglas did a brilliant piece yesterday with a Q&A session, and he mentioned a couple of defenders that we haven't talked about on the channel so far. There's Ilya Zabani from Bournemouth. We're going to park him for a later video and talk about him a little bit later, because I think that has been quite well documented. So it's a much more deep interest from Newcastle, I think, and we're going to cover that in a later video. But Jorel Hato from Ajax is a really, really interesting player that's been linked. 19 years old, highly rated across Europe, and Newcastle and Paul Mitchell have apparently been scouting him and watching him. He doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of what Newcastle need directly for the centre-back situation, because he is a left-sided player predominantly. He's played left centre-back mostly for Ajax this season, can also play left-back. But he's really, really good at progressing the ball. You can see in these stats that he's in the pretty much the 90th percentile for pass completion, 86th percentile for pass attempted, assists as well, and aerial duels and touches as well. He's very heavily involved in the play, in the build-up play. He's very much good at bringing the ball out from the back and of that sort of right ilk in terms of player Newcastle want. But he isn't the player that Newcastle need to sign immediately. I think that's absolutely crucial. He doesn't play on the right-hand side. As I alluded to in my earlier preview of the Everton game with what Newcastle United should do in defence, Eddie Howe really likes that left-right situation, so Hato would be a real asset to Newcastle. He'd be a brilliant defender, and there's a question from Geordie Robb about whether Newcastle are looking to replace Fabian Schär immediately or have somebody come in to play as his understudy and grow. Hato, even though he's on the other side, would be more of that sort of player who wouldn't be expected to play straight away. I think he would develop, and he's one of the best young players in Europe, absolutely. So it would be a great signing. I think Newcastle United need somebody to come in straight away and not necessarily automatically replace Fabian Schär, but challenge him and put him in a position where he has to win his place back. So do need a top right-hand side defender who's of the right age and of the right profile, something different to Schär, because Schär's very good on the ball, similarly to Hato in terms of his pass completion and everything, but he's not particularly quick. He doesn't have that recovery pace. Newcastle have been exposed by that over the last couple of years, as we know. To answer Rob's question, that's what Newcastle need to do. That's what Newcastle are looking to do. And that's why Hato is an interesting one. But for me, it's come a little bit out of left field in terms of whether they'll move for him earlier in the window, because it doesn't really make sense. But he's one of the best young defenders in Europe. He's got such versatility. He's very good on the ball, very good in the air. He's a great asset. And maybe, if you're talking, I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago on Sven Botman, whether Newcastle needs to add another defender on top of an existing right-hand side player, then Hato suddenly becomes the ideal type player, because he's young, he can learn from Botman, he's got very similar attributes, and he's on that side, he's very versatile as well. Another player who can play at left back. So it would make sense down the line this summer, but not as an immediate priority, I think, is absolutely clear. And the other player I'm going to talk about, I'm really excited about this, is Croatian midfielder Martin Bartarina, who's very similar to Luka Modric in so many ways. The same height as Modric, same club, Dinamo Zagreb. He's been earmarked as the new Modric. He's played 11 games for Croatia. He's really impressed this season in the Croatian league with Zagreb. He reminds me a lot of when Newcastle were interested in Modric back in 2008 when Kevin Keegan was manager. He's very much more of a number 10 than Modric has sort of gone into being an 8 and then latterly a 6. Batarina looks very much more like a number 10, very good in terms of carries, as you can see here, assists. He's got 11 this season. He's got 11 in the league this season. He's very good at creating chances, take-ons, that sort of thing. It's that type of midfielder that I've said that Newcastle United need. He really fits that bill. That left 8 going into a number 10 really does fit that bill. He's great, as I say, with take-ons, young player, and I think this is a really interesting conversation to have where, for me, Newcastle United need to balance their market this summer, looking for experience, ready-to-go players in certain positions, and then taking risks and looking at other markets. I've mentioned that so many times on the channel, and that's exactly what Paul Mitchell's there for. I think Newcastle need to strike that balance. In defence, I think they should go for somebody a little bit more ready, a little bit more established from a proven league. Maybe a Mark Gahey, maybe Zabani's had a great season at Bournemouth, as I say. We'll talk about him later. A couple of other players, and that seems to be where Newcastle are looking to go with that centre-back situation. If you look at, they're interested in Tosin Adarabioyo, their links with Gahey as well, and others. I think it's clear that Newcastle United really want a centre-back that's proven. Right-hand side as well, very similar with Brian Mbeumo, obviously previously Michael Elise, their interest there. Those two positions they want to improve with proven players. But beyond that, I would be looking at interesting markets and looking at gems, and Batarina is definitely one of them. £22 million roughly. This is all according to the Chronicle, but it's been reported across Europe as well that Newcastle are one of the clubs, and Manchester United, Arsenal, and others are watching him. If they go and spend heavily on those two key positions, the ones that everybody knows Newcastle need to strengthen immediately, it's going to take a huge amount out of their budget. And if they get into the Champions League, that bigger budget, up to 150 million potentially this summer, if they get into the Champions League, but a huge amount of that's going to go on two positions. Then you've got to get a little bit creative, I'd say, in goal. I've talked about Juan Garcia in the last week's video, and strikers as well. Newcastle United need to be creative. They need to look at untapped markets. This is a great example. His stats and his records are fantastic at a lower level. Can he step up? I think he definitely can, but there wouldn't be the pressure of him to step in and play all the time immediately. Joe Linton's going to still be here. Bruno Guimaraes, Sandro Tonali, that's still going to be the first choice midfield. And then Batterina can come in and make a difference in games, grow into the team. That's the sort of player that Newcastle United need, something a little bit different. And that price point and that quality and the player that he is, as I say, very much like early Modric, playing in that more advanced role and really making an impact for both Croatia and Dinamo Zagreb. This is a player that I think Newcastle should really look at, and the type of deal I would very much encourage them looking at doing this summer. Thanks so much for joining me on this video. Like, share and subscribe. As I say, thanks so much again for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. I'll be at St James's Park to react to the Everton result immediately from pitchside. All the fallout to come as well. Let's hope it's a victory. Let's hope Newcastle are in the Champions League next season. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.